Hello and welcome to this very short module. I think it's one of the shortest on closing a project. It might be the second shortest. Ethics might be the shortest. Anyway, let's just whip into it. This is a special focus on closing the project, and sometimes you get tempted to want to just drop this into project management foundational concepts or project planning generally, but it's important just to bring it out as a very special focus because generally it's just not done very well at all. So my goal at the end of this is that you know that you have to put together an agreed project closure checklist, and you do it at the beginning, that you realize that projects should be formally closed, all parts of them, not just left to wither and die. Lessons learned need to be gathered and documented, as well as post-implementation review, and of course the magical benefits realization, checking whether all of those things that you thought were going to happen actually did happen, apart from the deliverable appearing. So that's what we want to take you through here. Unfortunately, the real world is that most projects are just generally not closed properly because what often happens is the project manager and the team sort of get to the end and they've done the deliverable and they say, well, now we've got to do project closure, and they get signed elsewhere. They get told, no, go off and do this other project. Go on. And project closure just stops, and there isn't really project closure. Project closure is just people stop working on the project, which isn't a great definition of project closure. Project closure is a great time to reflect and learn. It's a great time to formally acknowledge the team. It's a great time just to formally say we've done it all, or what's left to be done will be done by this person or this group as well. So I want you at the end of this module to realize that you should be doing project closure, and I'll give you some tips and tricks to help you do that. When do you plan to close? At the end? Near the end? The middle? No. You start right at the beginning. All that planning you do, all those components of the project management plan, there should be a closure plan in there. Hopefully it's part of your organizational project management methodology, so it's easy to figure out what is in it. In fact, the best ones that I've seen, best methodologies, have a long project closure checklist, and on that there are mandatory components and optional components. And as a project starts, as it's given the kickoff and the approval to go, decisions are made about what constitutes project closure on this project. So that's where you want to do it, at the beginning of the project with all of your other planning. And there's a reason for this. If you can include the closure work as part of your project scope statement, and then that becomes part of the work breakdown structure, if you can capture it there, then you can allocate time, cost, and resources to it. And then it in itself becomes a deliverable for the project. We often find that this is one of the reasons why it's not done very well, is it's just not expected nor allowed for. So if you can include it in the project scope statement, remember in that module about scope definition, we talked about the difference between the project and the product scope statement. Include project closure work in the project scope statement, and then it will make its way into the work breakdown structure. Once it's there, you can allocate something like 40 hours over 4 weeks, so maybe 10 hours a week, or starting at 15, 12, 8, 5, whatever else it is. You can allocate costs to it in terms of any costs incurred, whether it's charge out rates or external costs or materials cost, and you can allocate resources to it. You, the project manager, project team members, because the reality is you may start working on another project at the same time, and maybe closure is a part-time activity that you do over 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks. And you can be working on other projects that are starting up at the same time as well. So please make sure you have your project closure checklist. Now, there are plenty of great examples of checklists out there. Here's a fairly generic one, very simple, very generic. And this one sort of features, was the deliverable accepted by the client? Have lessons learned been gathered and stored? Have all tools been accounted for? All invoices paid, all payments received, all project benefits received or assessed, and the team party. It lists who's going to be responsible for it and when it's due to be completed, or what the status is. So you should have your closure checklist agreed at the beginning with all the things that your organization and your clients want to see as part of project closure. I'm just going to run you through some of the more common aspects of project closure, some of the things that you do need to explicitly think about. The first one is contractual closure. Now, it sounds strange, but all contracts should be closed. They're often not, though, are they? You just sort of do some work, get your bills paid or pay your bills, and then that's it. But it's actually really good practice. Once all that's been done, to send each other an email saying, as per the contract, you've delivered all the services, we've paid all your bills, therefore the contract is now ended. And obviously at the end of the project, you want all contracts to be ended, but you can also be ending contracts throughout the life of a project too. Some contracts may be just in the first part of the project, then that person ends or that service ends. But you should always end with an exchange of emails or letters or something that just says, we agree the terms of the contract have been met. And if you do get to the end of it and there's some niggly little bits about it, you may just simply agree, look, to end and close this contract, you do this amount of work, we'll pay you this much, and we'll call it quits. Again, that's all in writing. Once that was done, you'd follow up with an email or a letter saying, we agree that all the terms of the contract have been met, this contract has now ended. It's just one of those things that a few years after the project, when somebody comes back and say, hey, somebody's saying that they didn't meet all the terms of the contract, you can at least point to it and go, actually, we all agreed it was, and here's the document trail for that. So please start getting used to doing that, and always at the end of a project, but you may do contractual closure during a project as well. The next one that most projects are going to have to do is financial closure. Basically, this ends with shutting down your cost accounting system. And I say that because I've known several projects that have left their cost accounting systems open, accidentally or not, and future projects have been charged to it. Not great practice, by the way. So the final step is going and talking with your finance team and saying, could we just shut down that particular cost code so no other costs can be charged to it? But before that, you want to make sure that you've paid all your bills, all of your money has been received, and it's all ready to be shut down. You should obviously at the end of this be able to present a final report that gives a full financial accounting of the project's financial status. Did you finish under budget, over budget? How did you compare? What did the final baseline look like compared to the original baseline? All of those different things. But you want to lock it all down step by step, then shut it down. I do know of one project that was left open and people didn't realize that costs are still being charged to it. Took a lot of time for the accounts department to back out or journal a lot of entries to put them under the right one. So make sure that you do talk with your accounts or finance team and shut down those accounts once you've paid all the invoices and had all your invoices paid. Now, lessons learned. Now, this is very important, so pay attention to this one. I'm a big believer in doing lessons learned properly. And in order to do them properly, there's 3 essential parts of it. Okay, now you should be doing lessons learned throughout the project, but definitely at the end of the project. But there are 3 essential parts, and I'll just write them up here. There's lessons gathered, lessons stored, and lessons learned. Now, if you're not doing all 3 of these, don't bother doing any of them, in my opinion, because you're just wasting your time. The first step is lessons gathered. Throughout the project and at the end, you should be having regular formal and informal lessons learned sessions. You should be getting your team together regularly and say, what have we learned about the last period of time? And particularly at the end of the project with the post-implementation review and things like that. So you should be gathering these. And obviously in an adaptive or agile environment, you may be running regular retrospectives at the end of iterations or sprints or certain milestones like the delivery of certain features, in which case you should gather all of these lessons. But if you only do lessons gathered and not the next 2, don't bother doing lessons gathered. You've next got to make sure they're stored somewhere central where people can find them. The ideal world is your lessons get stored in an online searchable database where people can search it by project size, type, complexity, dates, things like that, and they can search. And then within that, they can search for keywords and meta tags and filters and things like that. The minimum you should be using is an Excel spreadsheet, but there are special bits of software, and a lot of project management software does have space for lessons learned to be put. So they're stored. So you've got to gather them and you've got to store them. Now, if you only do those 2 and not the final one, don't bother doing the first 2. It's pointless. because the real magic of lessons learned comes from actually learning from them, reading past lessons learned and applying them to your current or future projects. That's the magic of lessons learned. And I've often said, if every company did lessons learned, consultants like me would be out of business. You wouldn't need us, because over time you would learn everything that we learn. So make sure you learn. What's the easiest way to learn? Here's a tip. All those project initiation documents, those mandates, those business case, those project charters, chuck or add in a little segment that says, what have you learned from recent similar projects and how have you applied it to this project? Make people acknowledge it right in the initiation. Then you'll do some real learning and you'll just get better and better and better. So remember, lessons gathered, lessons stored, lessons learned. Do all three things, particularly at the end, but this is something that should be done throughout the life of the project. Now here's a very generic, if you're looking for just a very simple template, this is something you could use to gather it and put it into your database or Excel spreadsheet. We've got at the top, obviously, the identifying data. What was the project name? Who prepared it? What was the date? What was the lesson number? You should have a big table. You can see all your lesson numbers, number 1 to number 172, whatever it is. What's the name of this lesson? What happened in detail? What was the action undertaken? What was the result? What had been the preferred result? What might have created the more preferred result? What was the specific lesson learned? What behaviours recommended for the future? Where and how can this knowledge be used later in this current project? Where and how can this knowledge be used in a future project? That's a really good example of the sort of information that you should be gathering. So take that and use it, or something similar, but I cannot stress the importance of doing lessons learned throughout the project, or particularly at the end. Now, the time at the end of the project during project closure, we'll actually sit down formally and look back over. You'll look back over all aspects of the project, everything from lessons learned to the choice of methodology, to the way it was started, to the particular approach taken, to the reporting, to the team development, to the product, to the quality. It's a really good opportunity to look back. Also seek feedback from customers and clients and users and other stakeholders about what they think was done well, what wasn't done so well, and put this all together in a big singular post-implementation review document. And again, the purpose of this is not just to spend time documenting things, but to improve your future performance. So make sure you communicate your lessons here. Have an intranet site and put your lessons out on it. Talk to your PMO or go and present at your internal community of practice. But certainly make sure that people know where to find your particular post-implementation review so they can learn from it. That's your focus, not just simply documenting things, but allowing you and your teammates and people in the future to learn from it. So during project closure, you should always set aside time and cost and people/resources to do the post-implementation review. Document it, store it, circulate it, share it. Okay, so make sure you do that. And obviously at the end is a perfect time to do benefits realization. There's a few slides on this one. Remember that this project wasn't approved for the deliverable, and it never has. If you've seen some of the earlier modules, I've mentioned it in the Project Management Foundation one and also the Project Scope module, that projects aren't approved on the basis of the deliverable. They're not. They're approved on the basis of benefits that are supposed to be derived from the outcomes from the deliverable. That's what they're approved on, that business case or the project charter or the initiation document or the contract you sign are supposed to deliver a benefit to the organization or someone. And that's what you need to be checking. So at the end of the project, this is where you start to do the benefits realization. And you set aside time and money and resources to do it. Okay, you want to go back to those original documents that approved it and outlined the benefits and see, did you achieve the benefits? You definitely did the deliverable. It's there. You can smell it, kick it, bounce it, play on it, whatever you're going to do with that deliverable. You can do that. You can prove it exists. But can you prove the benefits were achieved? Don't forget, even if you don't achieve the benefits, it's a great lesson for future project approval. You could find out you regularly overestimate project benefits. Therefore, there's probably some projects you shouldn't be approving. So here's some of the things that you need to do with benefits realization. One of the challenges is the time frame for which those benefits are due to be realized. Some projects will deliver the benefits actually during the project. As the deliverable is produced, the benefits are there immediately. And some projects, right once the deliverable is up and running and can be commissioned and working, the benefits there. But some projects can take years to realize their benefits. I do some work for some central government organizations here. One of the traffic agencies that does a lot of the highways and interstates, their benefits for any large works often aren't realized for months or years afterwards. So that becomes a problem for the project manager, because should it be their responsibility? Which may not be their responsibility, they may be long gone, but it's their responsibility during project closure to get agreement on who and when and how those benefit realization activities are going to be undertaken. Their final closure report should clearly state that the benefits are to be realized well after this project is completed, and therefore the asset owner or the customer or the product owner is going to be the person who in 6 months' time or 12 months' time, 24 months' time, comes back and looks at those benefits and where they're achieved. And that too is an interesting discussion, because I know that there are some people who believe that benefits realization for some things can be a permanent process, and that if you just measure them once at 1 year, you may find at 2 years or 3 years the benefits have been lost. But you need to make decisions about when, who, how people are going to check whether the benefits that you approved this project on are actually delivered. Some of the ways that you can do that is just bring together all the stakeholders, anybody that's been involved in being affected by the benefits, bring them together for a benefits realization meeting, bring up those initiation documents, those business cases, project chart, or whatever it is that describe the intended benefits, and get people to go, did we reach these benefits? Have some metrics in place where you can show them whether you did or you didn't, record the ones that you didn't realize. Also, any disbenefits that arrived, anything that arose that was a negative impact that you didn't foresee, that's called a disbenefit. Also record benefits that weren't expected but were delivered, both positive and negative. And once you've done all this benefit realization, document it and again store it so it can be retrieved in the future and learnt from. That's it. You want to get better at making investment decisions in all of your projects, and investment decisions are all built on these benefits, expectations, and forecasting based in those initial documents. So this is the time at the end of the project to do the benefits realization, but sometimes the project manager won't do it because it's too far in the future, in which case they need to make sure they get agreement on who. I know that one organization I worked with recently, their biggest problem was not delivering great deliverables, but getting agreement on who, 12 months or 24 months afterwards would actually do the benefits realization. I worked with them about 2 years ago, and after 3 months, we still didn't have clear agreement from either the asset owner, the regional manager, the central manager, the maintenance teams, as to who was actually going to take ownership of the benefits realization. So that can be one tricky factor, because time affects everything. But it's absolutely important. Now, the final thing you're going to do on any project is, well, I'll be honest, have a party. This is one of the things, remember during the module on great leadership, how you're going to recognize team individuals in that, and we did that in team development too, the importance of recognizing individual effort. Here, you're going to have some sort of event. Now, it may be that you're working with these project team members already again on other projects. That's fine. It may also be that there were some people who worked on your project months ago that did their work, then moved on. Well, invite them back. Your celebration could be as simple as a morning tea for 15 minutes where you put on some muffins and some orange juice, or it could be going out for a dinner or having some sort of celebration and party. And again, just to stress, you could already be working with these people again on multiple other projects, but just tell them that project that you're working on has now formally closed. The financial closure has been done, the contractual closure has been done, you've filed all the lessons learned, you've done a post-implementation review, and you've sorted out who, when, and how the benefits realization is going to be done. You've finally got approval from the client and the project sponsor that the project is now formally closed, and you just invite people back and you thank them. And again, it can be 15 minutes long, it can be 5 hours long, depending on what you choose. But please make sure you have some sort of celebration. So there we are. As I said, it is a short module on project closure. Hopefully, it made sense to you and you've learned some lessons there. So again, match the words and definitions, the same game we play at the end of one of these modules. On the left-hand side, we've got benefits realization, lessons learned or lesson learned, financial closure, team celebration, and post-implementation review. And on the right-hand side, we've got 5 definitions from A, B, C, D, or E. So I'll give you just a quick 10 or 20 seconds. Let's start with benefits realization. Is it A, B, C, D, or E? Hopefully, you selected C, choosing a time to check if the expected outcomes or benefits that started the project were achieved. Okay, what's lesson learned? Is it A, B, D, or E? Hopefully, you chose B, a technique of documenting what you've done well and not so well on the project so you can learn from it in the future. What is financial closure? Is it A, D, or E? This one stands out as easy. Hopefully you selected E, closing down the project accounts and making sure all invoices are paid. The last two, team celebration, they're either A or D, nice and easy. So number 4, a team celebration is A great way to recognise and celebrate the work the team have done to deliver the project. And post-implementation review is D, time at the end of the project to look back on all aspects of it and see if you achieved what you set out to. So there we are. So look, just quickly recapping, project closure starts during those initial planning activities. It's not something you leave to the end. Make sure you include it in your project scope statement, because then it can appear on the work breakdown structure and have time, cost, and resources allocated to it. Make sure that you go through contractual closure and financial closure and lessons learned and post-implementation review and benefits realization processes. And again, make sure that you have some sort of celebration for your team. So there we are. That's my very brief, quick introduction to project closure. As with all modules here, again, if you have any questions at all, just contact me, send me an email, send me a message, and I'll do my very best to get back to you as fast as possible with an answer. But thank you very much for getting this far, and I look forward to seeing you on one of the other modules. See you soon and have a great day.